So I'm going to start out just kind of talking briefly about the pinelands and some of the ecology, and then we'll kind of dive into the plants part of things. So first, again, my name is Rhyan Grech. I'm the policy advocate at Pinelands Preservation Alliance. We're a nonprofit organization. We focus on preserving the Pine Barrens ecosystem, its plants and wildlife, its landscape and water throughout the Pinelands National Reserve. Among our goals are to promote public awareness about the resources of the pinelands, like the plants, and what we have to do to preserve and protect those resources. And we also work to advance strong conservation policies, land stewardship, and permanent acquisition for land conservation. So, let me see if I can advance. There we go. So, very briefly, what is the pinelands? Pinelands is a wilderness in the most densely populated state in the whole country. It's the largest surviving open space on the eastern seaboard. It is a vast community of plants and animals, in some cases that are found nowhere else on the planet. A special place to explore by foot, canoe, or car, and also really a story of the ongoing struggle between humans and the preservation of nature, which of course is a story that exists in many places. Okay, so within the pinelands, I'm just real briefly going to go through three terms that are used very often interchangeably: Pinelands National Reserve, Pinelands Area, and Pine Barrens. But they actually are three distinct things. So the Pinelands National Reserve was established with legislation in 1979. And in this first map on the left, you'll see this kind of lime green area, and then these blue polygons along the side. Both of those together are the Pinelands National Reserve. So that's the boundary that was established by the legislation, federally protected. And as part of that legislation, the Pinelands Commission was formed, and that's a state agency in New Jersey that is in charge of managing basically what goes on within the pinelands. And this blue is part of an overlap area. We also have within New Jersey what's called the Coastal Area Facility Review Act. So that's a separate act that was passed to protect areas along the coast of the whole state. It even comes down and goes into the Delaware Bay coast. So in this area, the CAFRA area is overseen by the Department of Environmental Protection, so a separate state agency, and also has additional protections and restrictions with what you can do there. So this blue on the map shows where those two spots overlap, the Pinelands and the CAFRA. So what goes on in this area is that the two agencies, the DEP and the Pinelands Commission, have a memorandum of agreement where this DEP is the agency that upholds the Pinelands regulations here. So basically, if you want to build something in this overlap area, you submit an application to the DEP. And the Pinelands Commission does get a chance to review that application and advise on it, but the DEP has ultimate this kind of decision-making authority over that application. So the lime green is the Pinelands area. That's where the Pinelands Commission has direct jurisdiction. And then the two spaces, that the Pinelands area plus the overlap, is the whole Pinelands National Reserve. Now, the Pine Barrens is the third phrase that's used. The Pine Barren describes an ecosystem type, and we're going to dive a little bit into that. But this map on the right shows where the Pine Barrens exists in New Jersey. And you can see that it is well beyond the extent of the Pinelands. And so, we'll get into some more of those details in just a moment about what characterizes Pine Barrens. But first, just to note, this yellow boundary shows the whole Pinelands National Reserve. This is a map that shows land use in southern New Jersey. The red is urban and suburban, purple is farmland, the green is forests, and the light blue is wetlands. So it shows, first of all, that, geographically, the Pinelands is not all forests and wilderness, but is a mix of more urban areas, suburban farms, and forests. And then you can see, obviously, especially within the interior of the Pinelands, that a lot of forest still survives. That's that vast wilderness. It's about 800,000 acres of contiguous forest within the Pinelands. So you can bet that this map would look a lot different if not for the Pinelands Protection Act and the Pinelands National Reserve. So to drill down a bit into Pinelands ecology. So the Pine Barrens are naturally fragmented, but the intact habitat now is limited to about 10% of the original extent of the Pine Barrens. It basically exists in three distinct regions. We've got our part of New Jersey here, we've got Long Island, and we have Massachusetts. So, these sort of disjunct units have experienced habitat loss as a result of urbanization, suburban sprawl, expansion of housing developments, retirement communities, vacation homes have affected kind of all three areas. And extensive development in some areas have led to longer intervals between fire episodes for the habitat to kind of bounce back. And we'll talk about fire a little bit more in a minute. But kind of changing the balance within the Pine Barrens from a kind of a pitch pine dominated oak forest mix to more of an oak dominated forest, which you get with more infrequent fire. And additionally, within the Pine Barrens, obviously one of our major characteristics is the sandy soil. If anybody's gotten your vehicle stuck on some of those dirt roads in the middle of the Pinelands, I certainly know that experience. You know about sugar sand. It's a majority quartz, very rich in iron and aluminum, but very low in nutrients. So soils with low organic matter means very high drainage. Water just kind of shoots through the large sandy particles, have large spaces in between them, and the water drains very quickly. As a consequence, obviously the soils are very dry, have low nutrient levels. Any nutrients that fall to the forest floor kind of shoot right through that percolating water and are very acidic. The sandy soils don't have the ability to neutralize the already slightly acidic rainwater because they don't hold the minerals and organic matter that usually do this buffering in richer soils. And also for my chemists in the audience, Pine Barren soils are very high in aluminum, which breaks water molecules down into the positively charged hydrogen and the negatively charged OH, and releases that hydrogen molecule into the environment, which drops the pH. And you can see over on the side here, this chart, just for reference of pH of some common things. So you can see in the Pine Barrens, we're kind of in the orange juice, tomato juice sort of realm in terms of pH. And then fire, of course. The Pine Barrens ecology is fire dependent. So not only are they common, they're absolutely necessary for the survival of this type of ecosystem. That dry soil, highly flammable vegetation, lightning strikes lead to frequent fires. And like I said before, when there's low fire frequency, it sort of allows the oaks to take over a little bit. When there is a good fire, it sort of resets that natural succession process, returns nutrients for the soil, and opens space for regrowth. And the very cool thing about a lot of the plants within the Pinelands is the ability to regrow. The pitch pines have very low mortality after a fire. Most of the trees survive, and they're able to regrow branches out of the basal buds on their trunk. And they're also serotinous, which means that the cones actually won't open unless they're exposed to the extremely high heat of a fire. So after a fire comes through, those cones pop open, the seeds drop, and then they're free to regrow in the area that's now cleared out of the underbrush and some of the oaks and the other species that didn't survive the forest fire. So you'll see, obviously, you've probably heard, especially if you live in the Pinelands, of controlled burns. We're sort of just wrapping up that season, but it's usually during the cooler months. The Forest Fire Service in New Jersey will have, intentionally set controlled burns for a few reasons. It's primarily for safety. It's primarily to kind of clear out some of the underbrush and the fuel so that if there is a fire that is set unintentionally, it doesn't burn as hot or as out of control and would put people at risk. There was a recent legislation passed in New Jersey, the prescribed burn ban, the burn bill, that actually allows now scientists and the Forest Fire Service to work together to do more prescribed burns for ecological purposes. So basically to identify areas that are in need of a burn, to sort of do that reset for the ecology to kind of do what it would normally do. So we may see some increased prescribed burns as we move forward in this part of New Jersey. And the Pinelands really is an incredible mosaic of communities, from uplands to lowlands to aquatic. It's not just kind of that pitch pine oak dominated forest. You've got a lot of different things going on, and it's a really great opportunity to explore the Pinelands in multiple ways, either by foot or by kayak or canoe. You can get to some places that you would never see just from hiking, on horseback, on your bike. So it's kind of a multimodal place. If you've never been able to check out the dwarf pines area, if you kind of drive up 539 there, you can see those spaces. Very cool. So now we'll dive into plants. So native plant gardening, if you choose to use native plants in your own yard or in containers, they work with that too if you don't have a yard space, is a way for you to protect your local ecosystem, because you are expanding your local ecosystem, basically, into your yard. The benefits directly to you using native plants when you garden are reduced watering costs. These are plants that have evolved here in the Pinelands. They're used to those sandy soils. They're used to the amount of rainfall that we get. They're used to the fire. These plants are made for this sort of environment. So you don't have to irrigate in the ways that you do with some exotic plants. The maintenance is much less. Again, they're adapted for this environment. The need for pesticides and fertilizer is much lower than with some of your exotic plants. It attracts native birds and pollinators to your yard and supports them and their habitat, and really deepens your connection to your natural environment, because again, that's the environment that you're now welcoming into your yard. So it's very rewarding, and there are some direct benefits in terms of time and cost savings. And it's beautiful. I think a lot of people don't quite realize the diverse colors, the shapes and sizes and structures of native plants. They're really lovely, and there's a lot of wonderful options in terms of gardening with natives. So here's as opposed to trying to write all these down, we will send this list to you after the presentation, so you have it if you're interested, so you don't feel like you need to take crazy notes. But these are some Pine Barrens specific native plants. So we have trees, shrubs, and vines over on the left, and then herbaceous, so your perennial flowers basically, over on the right. Some ones that are found in the Pinelands. You can, it's really personal preference. Some people can choose to kind of be a purist and stick to only Pine Barrens natives. Some people choose to expand their plants for their yard to kind of South Jersey native plants. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But here are some of the options. And then, of course, we all tune into plant presentations for the pictures. So here are some pretty cool Pinelands natives. We've got bearberry. We have, just from clockwise from the top left here, you've got inkberry, blueberry. This one here is called meadow beauty. Butterfly weed is a great one for attracting pollinators. This is swamp azalea and an aster over here. Here are some of our rarer Pinelands plants. So if you're really lucky, and this time of year, I think is a good time for some of these. We've got swamp pink is a rare plant. This is one of our very cool carnivorous plants that we have in the Pinelands. So basically they feed on insects. It's a threadleaf sundew. This one here is a rose begonia. We've got white fringed orchid, and these two are Pine Barrens gentian. So another rare plant. And then here we've got lupin, wild lupin. This is mountain laurel. You might be familiar with this one. There's a lot in the Pine Barrens. This guy is spotted horseman. It's in the bee balm family. A couple more carnivorous plants. This is a different sundew. Let's see, brownleaf sundew. Trumpet pitcher plant fills up with water and the bugs fall in and it digests it. Super cool plant. And Turk's cap lily. Oh, and incidentally, there are dozens of species of orchids within the Pinelands, and they're super cool. It's very fun to kind of go hunting and have your orchid list of the different types of orchids that you see. Oops. Okay, so here is a list of some South Jersey natives. So like I said, it's a personal preference if you want your yard to be strictly Pinelands plants or kind of expand that out to include some other South Jersey natives. For me personally, some of these plants are very beautiful and very cool and attract a lot of interesting birds and bugs. And so for me, if it doesn't take over my yard, if it doesn't outcompete some of the specific native plants for resources like sun or water, I'm totally fine with it in my yard. So I've got purple coneflower in my yard. So again, we'll send this list out to you if you're interested. But here's some photos of some of these South Jersey natives. We've got blue flag iris. This is columbine, a really great plant. Cardinal flower. This is a coreopsis, the tick seed, the yellow. Another type of aster here. And then bee balm. All great pollinator plants. So just real briefly on dealing with deer. Deer are an issue in the Pinelands. You can see sort of how the population has exploded over the last even 50 years or so. And it's directly tied to human activity, with the removal of the top predators in the area, increase in the type of habitat that deer really like, including more fields, more edge habitat. The population was just sort of given free rein to blow up, and it does have negative impacts on the biodiversity. And then specifically for your garden, that means that they might come looking for your plants. So there are no truly deer-proof plants. There are some that they prefer less than others, though. So basically, when you garden with natives, you can look at, these are a couple of really great resources, the Native Plant Society and the Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve, to choose some of those less favorable plants in the eyes of deer when you plant. You can also, fencing or caging is always an option. If you're planting trees or shrubs, a lot of times it's just, a matter of getting that plant to the point where it's large enough that it can sustain some deer browse and it won't really do as much damage, so that might just be for the trees, the first couple of years or so. It might be good to have a deer guard around the trunk or something like that. So like I said, these are a couple of really great resources to check out if you want to make sure to sort of minimize deer damage in your yard. So I just want to mention, in terms of New Jersey's native plants, we have more than 2,100 species. About 16% are listed state endangered, and another 23% are listed as species of concern. We have a large chunk that's imperiled to some degree, and 32 species already extirpated from New Jersey, which means they're not found in this state anymore. There's 30 species only known from only a single population in the state, and 5 species endemic to New Jersey, which are only found here, 52 globally rare. And, more species get added kind of each year to the endangered species plant list. We do have a legislation that was passed in New Jersey, the Endangered Plant Species List Act in 1989. The act does not actually require protections for these listed plants. Here in the Pinelands and in other areas like up in the Highlands, we have protections for plants within those jurisdictions. So within that Pinelands area map that I showed you earlier. But any reference to threatened species of plants doesn't come with any sort of additional protections like it does with animal species. There's no listing of threatened plant species. This just goes to show that, most, I guess, of the counties in New Jersey have endangered plant species. So it is, widespread throughout the state. And there is legislation currently in Trenton. So this is a rare plant bill. It's only been introduced in the assembly so far, but will protect rare plants and ecological communities, which is a very cool feature of this bill. Oops, I'm sorry. There we go. In New Jersey, it will legally protect these plants. Poaching is unfortunately a problem for a number of species in the Pinelands, especially some of those cool carnivorous plants. Poaching is an issue. So this would protect against that, require the creation of conservation plans. It would also allow for emergency listing of rare plant or ecological communities if there's a need to kind of, speed up that timeline a little bit. And it will allow for incidental destruction of a rare plant only if there's a greater environmental benefit and the conservation plan is implemented. So how can you incorporate native plants into your yard? We just happen to have a online native plant sale going on. It started this morning and it's going through next Wednesday. We have, under normal circumstances, we have native plant sales at PPA every year. And it's usually a really great day. Obviously in the last year, we haven't been able to do that. So we have a really great partner with Pinelands Direct, which is the sort of online arm of Pinelands Nursery up in Columbus, if anybody's familiar with those guys. But they're great partners. And so basically you can order plants online this week and you can have them delivered to your house, which is just super cool and super convenient, or you can schedule a pickup if you're in the area. And if you use the code PPA plants, a portion of the proceeds go to support our work at PPA. So, a great partnership that we have with Pinelands Direct. We have more information on our website at pinelandsalliance.org, including a direct link to the Pinelands Direct website. But check out their website. They have a lot of really great, plants in stock, a wonderful variety. And also the people there are very helpful if you're looking to, you're not exactly sure what would be the best fit for your yard. So I recommend you check that out at some point in the next week. Remember that code PPA plants. And that is it for the presentation. We have just a few minutes left. So I would love to hear if folks have any questions or comments, or if we want to go back to any of the photos. Like I said, we can send the lists out to you guys of the plants if that's helpful. And always feel free to contact me and here's my email address if you have any questions. I'd be happy to help get that information to you. Any questions? And Becky put some links in the chat. Be sure to check those out. Additional resources about native plants, and then the link to our sale that's going on over the next week.
So this is Nancy, and I started a couple minutes late. Thank you so much for this presentation. I love native plants. I've been a member of Native Plant Society of New Jersey and New Jersey Audubon, and now live in Whiting, and we are in the process of getting rid of a lot of non-native overgrown shrubs and planting all natives where we can, and trying to do a small front, like an 8-foot by 16-foot native plant gardener specifically for pollinators.
Nice.
So blue flag, does blue flag iris need to have wet roots, or will it grow? I mean, we have a lot of sand. Will it grow in our sandy soil, or does it need to be in a wetter place?
My experience with blue flag is that it does like to have its feet a little bit wetter. I think it's a good fit for something like a rain garden. So if you have either a lower depression in your yard, or if you have a downspout off of your house that's disconnected, I think that would be a really good fit for a spot like that. So I think it could, deal with the sandy soil if it had, if it was a little bit lower like that and was kind of an accumulation place for the rainwater.
Okay. We're going to be putting in a small pond form in that front garden that a friend gave us. It's got a couple of shallow shelves. Is that too much water if it's potted and set in on one of the shallow shelves, or we're going too overboard with water at that point?
That might work. I don't think it likes to have its roots wet all of the time.
Okay.
Yeah, but it might work. I mean, try it out. If it's on a shelf where the water level fluctuates a little bit, I think that's one of the things about blue flag is it can kind of handle those sort of changes in water level too. So, gardening is really just about trial and error. I found, even with whether it's vegetables or whether it's other types of plants. And, what might work in your yard, of course, the amount of sunlight always comes into, is a factor. So yeah, I'd recommend trying it out and kind of see how it does. And then you can kind of see if there's areas where it does well, then you can kind of, increase your numbers in that spot. Okay.
And then I'm relatively new to living in the Pinelands. I don't know where your headquarters and plant sale for pickup is. Can you give me that address real quickly?
Sure. So our headquarters, we're in Southampton, although that's not going to be where the pickup for the Pinelands, the plant sale is. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, I guess both. Where can I come visit you, and where do I pick up the plants if we wanted to do a pickup?
Gotcha. So our headquarters is in Southampton. We're at 17 Pemberton Road in Southampton.
17 what? I'm sorry.
That's okay. Pemberton Road.
Oh, Pemberton.
Yeah, we can put it in the chat for you.
Okay.
And and our headquarters has been closed for the last year, of course, but we will be opening back up hopefully in the next couple of months. And we do have, I encourage everybody to come visit us. We're on a historic farmstead. We have 70 acres that was donated to us a couple of years ago surrounding that we have made into a sustainable farm. We have a lot of native plants growing on the site. And then to your other question, the pickup for the plant sale, Becky, that's up in the Columbus area too, right? Is that where Pinelands
Right.
Direct?
Yep, Pinelands Direct is located in Columbus, New Jersey. And there's a link in the chat to the webpage, but if you go to pinelandsdirect.com, you'll see all the information, and you can search for plants by the function. So you can search for plants by pollinator type, or by the type of plant as far as area goes. And then their address is on the website there, but they are about 8 miles north of where we're located off of Route 206 in Columbus.
Okay, great. Thank you both.
You're welcome.
And as part of the participant today, I'll automatically get the plant list sent?
Yes, we'll email that out to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this. This is great.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for joining us. You folks have any other questions?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
This is Lisa Batten. I'd like to be able to send you some pictures
Great.
Of a plant that I have no idea what it is. So do you have some kind of email or link that I can send you the pictures of?
Sure. You can send it directly to me. My email address is there on the screen. It's rhyang@pinelandsalliance.org. And,
okay.
And if I can't ID it, I'll figure out somebody who can for you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
There. You're welcome.
Okay, great.
All right, so it's a few minutes after 1. So again, I encourage folks to reach out directly to me if you think of any other questions. Check out the links in the chat, or just you can find all of them on our website. And thanks again to all for joining us today. And hopefully we have a really great growing season this year, and best of luck with your plants and your gardening. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.